Thank you, Julie, and a very warm welcome to everybody from around the world for this Real Estate Live event to here in Belfast. It's the first in a series of events we're running as part of the Renewed Ambition programme, which will highlight reasons to invest in this great city. My name is David Elliott from Lanyon Group, and I'll be your host for this session. We're going to be taking you on a virtual journey through this city to show you why Belfast makes a compelling proposition to live, work, learn and invest in. To do that, we have a panel of brilliant experts with me this morning from the private, public and the education sector, as well as a representative from a US company which has not just invested here, but invested quite a few times. Without further ado, let me introduce our magnificent panel. We have to my right, Alistair, Reid, Strategic Director of Place and Economy at Belfast City Council. We have Professor Folli, who is Provost of Belfast and Jordanstown campus at Ulster University. We have Chris Wallace, who's Director of People Strategy at Rapid7, a US cybersecurity firm. We have Damian Mitchell, a Founder and Director of Causeway Asset Management. So that's our panel. We'll be putting them through their paces in just a second. We're going to have around 35, 40 minutes of discussion between the panel, and then we're going to open it up to you, the audience, with some questions for them. But first of all, we're going to jump right in. And before I do that, just say to send in any of your questions as we go along. Alistair, can you just initially set the scene for us? I've touched on the compelling proposition which Belfast offers. What exactly is that proposition?
Well, I think there's three parts to that, David. I think the first part is the vision. There's also the offer, and there's also the track record of the city. So in terms of the vision, collectively, the agencies, businesses, academic institutions, communities have set out the aspiration for the city through initially the Belfast agenda and now through our emerging local development plan, which gives it a statutory basis. And in that vision, we've said we want Belfast to grow. We want to grow the city. We want to grow the number of people that live in Belfast by 60,000 people. That means we need to create 40,000 new jobs, build 30,000 new houses. So all that's a kind of reflective of a collective ambition. But of course, that means we're pro-development, but that development needs to be right. It needs to be right for the green environment, and it needs to be right for the communities in which that development is going to sit and interact with. In terms of the offer, there's no doubt that Belfast has a fantastic talent pool, from the schools right through to vocational education and our two magnificent universities. And I'm sure Rafi will kind of tell us a bit more about her own experience in the universities. So we have that skill base. We also have a very kind of compelling offer in terms of cost, both in terms of those who live and work here and the cost of doing business. So I think that's certainly been an attractor for many people to come to Belfast. And then we have a continuing supply of product. So last year we transacted 1 million square foot of Grade A office in the city. There's another 1 million square foot in the pipeline. We've seen PwC and KPMG take some of their biggest office space requirements in the UK in Belfast. So Grade A companies taking up that Grade A office space. And we have a growing number of global companies coming to locate in the city. And that's kind of effectively our developing track record. So creative and digital, financial, professional services, technology and advanced engineering. And just to kind of establish it, other people have said that we are number one in terms of international investment for the international investment location for cybersecurity coming from the US. And I'm sure Chris will tell us a lot more about that this morning. We're number one European city for new medical software development, number one global destination for financial technology. And all of that kind of being our track record, the compelling proposition. So vision, offer and track record.
It would be remiss of me not to ask, that's a great proposition, but how does it change after the months that we've been going through in the COVID pandemic?
Yeah, well, there's no doubt COVID has had an impact on the city. Belfast, no different from anywhere else in the world. And I think what we would describe as happening at the moment is a slowdown, rather than we're not at the same pace of development as we have been. So that slowdown has had an impact. But to some people's surprise, and perhaps not mine, we've continued to see relocation coming into the city during that period. And I would say that we're probably measuring jobs in hundreds rather than thousands at the moment. But we've had Nueda, a digital innovation company, putting 230 new jobs into the city. Peak 6, a software engineering company, with 160 new jobs. Those that have been developing, and again, Rapid 7, and Chris will talk about that, continuing with their expansion plans within the city. And not forgetting that a lot of Belfast investment comes from companies who've already invested in the city, taking the next step. And a lot of that work and progress is still happening. In the past 8 months, we've seen 2 major schemes going through planning. So the waterside development of £450 million mixed-use residential office-based development on the east side of the river has gone through. Tribeca, a 12-acre city centre mixed use, has gone through. Each of these valued at somewhere near 500 million. We've seen the Belfast Harbour Film Studios, so home of the Game of Thrones, expanding as well. So we've seen some kind of magnificent private investments. And then, of course, as we all know, the public sector has been very active with new schemes of investment, but also some of the things that we were attending to pre-COVID still remain very valid. Our City Deal programme, an £850 million partnership with the Westminster and Stormont governments, the local authorities, not just Belfast, but in the surrounding area, and our academic institutions and business, bringing forward a programme over the next years focused on digital skills, tourism and innovation. So a series of projects to still being worked on. And of course, in neighbourhoods, the council still pursues its £8 million neighbourhood regeneration activity. So it would be fair to say there's been a slowdown, but it's still been a very busy time for the city over the last months.
Interesting that momentum's still going. I wonder, could you give us a flavour of how you as a council work with potential inward investors and Indigenous companies as well, but more so around the companies that are thinking about coming here from around the world? How do you get involved with them? How do you help them expand once they're here?
So it's fair to say that we work very closely with our partners, Invest Northern Ireland, in that respect, to have a global presence, promoting the business and the opportunity within Northern Ireland and Belfast, of course, not simply around attracting foreign direct investment, but encouraging local businesses to trade, so import and export, which is a very important part of our local economy. But they in a sense, connect and fish, if you like, in the global pond along our kind of desired sector. So we've talked about cybersecurity, financial technology, and so forth. So they're out there bringing companies into us. And what we like to do is offer what we call a soft landing. So we have a welcome and access to the kind of business ecosystem within the city. And what we find is that many of our investors now are not the kind of huge, let's bring in thousands of jobs at the one time, but the kind of sectors that we're dealing with are taking small offices. They're coming in, taking a shared office space. It may even be 1, 2 or 3 people initially, and then they're growing to 200, 300, 400, it's plus. And so that kind of small business, as it were, is very kind of open to working with ourselves, taking them through the planning system, sector-specific support. So they'll be looking at the employment needs of their future growth, and we'll work with them in terms of skills academies. We'll help them with supplier and supply chain, and we'll help them with their own ambitions to internationalise and export and import. So working very closely with Invest Northern Ireland as our partner, then offering that soft landing service for people as they come in.
Really interesting that sort of how you really help them when they get here. One of the reasons that investors come here, a lot of the time it's flagged as talent, brings us nicely on to Rafi. A lot of companies here, inward investors, not just invest, but they reinvest. 70% of them reinvest. How do you as a university ensure that you're meeting the right pipeline or producing the right pipeline of talent and really meeting the needs of companies, not just inward investors, but also Indigenous companies that are based here?
Well, I'll start by quoting you. So if 70% come back, we must be doing something right. So let's start from there and then sort of think a little bit about, in practice, what the university does. So I would say that another really undeniably strong part of the DNA of Ulster University is the connection with industry. It really forms part of its various incarnations and evolutions. In practice, the way this manifests itself is that first of all degrees have included in them either a placement opportunity, in some cases is a whole year sandwich in between the second and the third year, or indeed work-based learning as an important and essential component of the student journey. And that already tells you something about how our students are in the classroom, but they are already, during those formative years, getting ready for what expects them when they leave the university. The second important thing is that the industry is a really close partner of the university. Every degree team will have connections with the industry in the form of employers' advisory boards, which might have people from industry coming in to deliver lectures. There will be opportunities for students to go visit industry while they are already sort of starting to come closer to the time when they'll choose a placement opportunity or a work-based learning opportunity. We have, industry feeding into our revalidation exercises. Every 5 years, every degree in the university has to look back at what they've done and see whether they're meeting the needs of the world as it's changing and industry. And then, of course, there is the extreme case of industry sometimes coming together with university to shape new degrees, new offering. And so I will pick an example because it's really a recent evolution, if you want. A few years ago, law and computing and some international law firms came together and they founded the Legal Innovation Center. Now, the Legal Innovation Center has delivered over the past few years a lot of interesting projects and opportunities for development. But this September, that has brought a new thing, on the offering, because a new master's in law and computing is being offered at the university, and I think that really gives you a sense of the trajectory of that kind of collaborations. And of course, I have not even touched on the fact that even on the research side, of course, we have, a myriad of examples where we train PhD students, we develop projects in collaborations with industry. So we have the examples of Randox, for example, collaborating with the university in the biomed sphere. We have BT in engineering and computing, and then the creative industry is another example of film industry, arts councils coming together with university to develop research projects in the area.
Such an important link and such an important thing to do to be able to provide exactly the right type of talent for industry. Moving on to Chris. Chris, Rapid 7 has been here since 2013, if I'm correct in saying that. Yeah. Based in Boston, and is one of those ones which is not just invested but reinvested a couple of times. Absolutely. Can you give us an idea, first of all, for those that don't know, what Rapid 7 does, sure, and why you chose Belfast? Because I believe you had quite a few choices in the world to choose, and you came to Belfast.
Yeah, absolutely. So I guess the overview of Rapid 7, US, Boston-based cybersecurity company, about 1,800 staff globally. formed in 2000. We set up the Belfast office, as you correctly say, at the end of 2013. And I think the origin behind that was, like a lot of technical companies, especially in North America, Rapid7 was discovering a challenge in hiring technical staff. We have about 5 technical centers throughout North America in various cities. But all of them have their own constraints and challenges when it comes to attracting and retaining staff as well. And so on the back of that, given the company's growth plans, they started the process of researching an international growth location. And I'm sure they went to a lot of the usual sort of places. Northern Ireland actually wasn't on Rapid7's radar at all until InvestNI actually reached out to them. And through the introductions that InvestNI made, InvestNI and the City Council do a fantastic job of educating potential investors about the proposition that Northern Ireland and Belfast represents. So the decision was made to focus on this as our location. And I think that the things that played into that were, well, there was a variety of things. One of them, just to come on the back of what Rafi was talking about, you know, it's very easy to say that there is the ability to have good relationships between universities and employers. And certainly that was the story that Rapid7 heard as well. As the person who was brought on board to kind of set up our presence here and establish the office and bring up staff on board and everything else, it was then for me to find out whether that was the reality or whether that was just a nice thing to say. And I was incredibly relieved and very happy to learn that it was a very real truth that the universities are very open to forming close relationships with employers. And candidly, that's been key to a lot of Rapid7's growth over the years, is maintaining that close relationship and developing quite a mature internship and graduate program through that collaboration. So there was the collaboration opportunities with the universities. There was the fact that Belfast is just known as a bit of a technical hub and somewhere where innovation and technology has always had a home. Culturally, we're well aligned. We're a convenient time zone, and look, we're a cost efficient or a more cost efficient or cost attractive proposition as well. Which is to say, we provide a very good balance of all of the things that I mentioned before, with a comparatively fair economic proposition. There are certainly more attractive oppositions out there, but we provide a really good balance here. And I think as well, to Alistair's point, the partnership that Rapid7 found, especially during the research period with the City Council, with InvestNI, with the organizations that they were introduced to, with shared space office providers. I was introduced to Rapid7 in one of their visits here in 2013. So it was made very easy for Rapid7 to learn about the company, about the country, and find a home here.
It's interesting. You were the first person to join the company, I believe, and you were talking about how you sat on that first day in your home office, and now you're back in your home office because of COVID. It's quite an interesting journey.
I did get out for a little while, but I'm back there now.
You're back there now. Well, yeah, a lot of us are. What was it like, that process of growing a company? Because you initially came, as you said, to set up an office of 65. You now have 220, I believe. You know, that's quite a remarkable journey in a relatively short space of time. For anyone, it must be an interesting process. But what was it like growing that business here?
It was and continues to be a roller coaster, but it was great. The plan initially was, as you say, to hire about 60, 70 staff over the course of 3 years. And that's what I signed up for, and that sounded ambitious enough. And so we started off, and I'm in my little home office talking to people about this company that they hadn't really heard of before. The experience of growing that was, look, it was a challenge. It's, you know, good technical staff are in demand here like they are everywhere else. But I think that one of the things that really played into Rapid7's favor here was there's an appetite for people, I believe, in Northern Ireland to be part of something to be part of something bigger and exciting and engaging. And I suppose that's evidenced by the fact that so many of the people who are still with us in 2020 joined us in 2014 based on the promise that they were told about this company who would give them interesting work to do, challenging problems to solve in an engaging, vibrant sort of culture, you know. So the other thing I would say is, you know, initially we had planned to set up that office as like a sort of a mid-sized technical office for the company. As you say, we kind of exceeded that growth plan very, very quickly. Within about 18 months, we had passed our sort of 3-year growth plan. And candidly, that was just based on the level of confidence that our senior leadership in Boston had based on the people who joined us and the work that they were producing. So it went from being, let's set up a mid-sized office in Northern Ireland, to adding additional functionality, adding a secure operations center, support staff, info security staff, HR staff, and so on and so forth. So it's grown to the stage today, like you say, where we have 221. Everyone counts, and so when I checked it this morning, it's 221, and that makes us the company's second largest office. We're the largest technical office for the company, and we are not done growing by a long shot. So confidence is still very high in Belfast as a location.
And that's evidenced by your new office building. You'll soon be able to get out of that home office and into a fantastic new office space, Chichester House on Chichester Street.
That's the dream.
That's the dream, yeah, I'm sure. What does the future hold for your business? You know, you're obviously very positive about the business here, but what does it hold in Belfast? Because by that fantastic building, you know, you've obviously got big plans.
Yeah. I think the journey to this point is similar to a lot of, you know, overseas companies investing here, which is to say, you start with a serviced office arrangement until you get to some sort of critical mass, and then you go to find your home, so to speak. So we've been in our home for, I don't know what it is, maybe about 3 years, and we've outgrown it. So we are moving to a nice big building in Chichester Street. Should be finished within around about a month and a half or so. You know, touch wood. Look, our plans going forward. I'm a little worried that we're going to outgrow that new office long before the lease expires, but that is a good problem to have. It's a fantastic space. I had a look around it on Monday, and I'm not sure that there's many or any other offices like that in Northern Ireland. So it's fantastic what the real estate provider and the contractors have been able to do for us in realizing the vision that we have there. And in terms of more generally Rapid7 with regards to Belfast and Northern Ireland, look, we have grown internationally, and we've also grown technical offices internationally by way of acquisition. So we acquired a company with a Dublin office, so we have a Dublin office. We acquired a company with a Galway office, Stockholm, so we're in Stockholm. But Belfast was and continues to be the primary growth center for Rapid7, certainly from a technical capacity. And so anytime that we do one of these acquisitions, and we're fortunate enough to partner with this new company, one of the things that I'm sure people are thinking about is at what point will we spin up a team in Belfast to work on this new offering as well. And in fact, Belfast is the only technical office within Rapid7 where all of our product portfolio has a development presence. So I imagine that Belfast will continue to grow very ambitiously in Northern Ireland, and I'm excited to be part of it. It's been a great success story for the company thus far.
Great stuff. It segues nicely to Damian. Causeway Asset Management developed Rapid7's new base at Chichester House. Damian, you're providing grade A space for Rapid7 and lots of other accommodation for inward investors, for indigenous companies on a daily basis. How common is their story?
It's very common, David, and I think certainly Rapid7 are poster guys in terms of what Belfast is good at. I mean, just listening to Chris speak there in terms of where the company has come from and how they've evolved. It didn't start yesterday. the hard work went in several years ago with Invest NI and the assistance of the council and that ecological system that's in Belfast is, and parties being introduced to who they need to speak to in terms of growth. They're certainly more like them. And if you heard from Chris, as the company has evolved, they've changed and they've reinvested. You mentioned 70% of FDI companies reinvest. It's very, very comforting for a lot of people to hear who aren't familiar with Belfast. But Belfast, in terms of an attractive city to be in for other companies in the tech space. We have worked with several similar to Rapid7 from various backgrounds, not only in cyber but from other tech specialities. We launched from a real estate point of view. We looked to see how we could provide and assist companies like Rapid7 coming in. So we launched StepSpace back in 2017, and StepSpace was really a scaling solution for companies to assist Invest NI and the council to attract the talent, the companies here to avail of the talent within Belfast. So there's several like Rapid7s come into the city.
And I suppose the hubs, like a cybersecurity hub, which Belfast is becoming more and more renowned for, really do help that vision and help attract others in the same kind of sphere as the way the legal services as well really have helped. I suppose that's from a developer point of view, that's great news.
Yeah, I mean, a developer's point of view, we need to fit within the system. So we need to be providing the right space for companies like Rapid7 to proper collaborate with companies like Rapid7 to understand what they require. And that is where, it's not just about developing a grade A office for the sake of developing a grade A office. You've got to really understand what the needs of the occupier and the company is. And they're all at different levels in terms of their journey. So you've really got to get in under the skin of the company and properly understand what they require and truly partner with them. And I think that's the key that we can all pay within the real estate industry in this ongoing success of Belfast, because, the universities have done a terrific job and continuing to do so. Invest and I are doing a terrific job in selling the city worldwide. And I think the real estate industry, we need to identify what's missing and how can we fill that gap, which we're doing. And Belfast is now attracting the attention of worldwide investors. Because this story of steady expansion growth with companies like Rapid7 being successful, reinvesting within the city, that's now catching the attention of worldwide investors. But it didn't start yesterday.
And what do you think from a developer point of view is the attraction of Belfast to these guys? What's bringing them here?
I think it's a number of things. David, I think first and foremost, it now has a track record of an attractive place to invest in. Again, that's through the success of companies like Rapid7 and others within the knowledge base industry, which is, it's taken up about 50% of the space over the last number of years. Location of where Belfast sits is very important. The geography location. We're 100 miles from Dublin. We're an hour's flight to London, so that triangular trade between the three is extremely important going forward. The collaboration of what's happening within the city, and that ongoing collaboration is very comforting from investors to know and understand is now happening. And we're hearing it today from Alistair and Rafi and Chris talking about how at different parts each play their own game, which is extremely important. And really investor returns. I mean, any investor that wants to invest wants to know what the returns are. In Belfast, we've been able to produce double-digit returns for investors, and that's across a wide spectrum. And other developers having similar experiences, whether it's offices or student residential, and hopefully build a rent to come. It is an attractive place to invest. There's a lot of opportunities, not only within the office sector, but as more people work within the city centre, they'll want to live in the city centre, and that will naturally then develop.
And returns really are the thing from an investor point of view that you want to see and you want to be confident of. But it's that collaboration angle which is really interesting that you talk about. That is something that I think is pretty unique to Belfast in the way that everybody from public sector to universities to everywhere joins together to make it a really compelling offering.
Well, I think people talk about, this word collaboration gets used a lot around the world. I think, the panel here this morning is a working out of that. From Rapid 7's initial reason to come here because of what the universities are producing in terms of top talent, to the assistance of Invest in I and the council when they arrive in terms of introducing to the various other partners within Belfast, to ourselves understanding what we need to produce and do in terms of what do we need to create to help house or keep the occupiers here. That's proper collaboration. And from my own knowledge, I know that's continuing. We're trying now to learn from the effects of COVID. How do we learn from that and how do we adapt and change? And we're having various discussions on various platforms with bodies from different backgrounds. And that's the refreshing thing about Belfast, is we're not standing still in our tracks. We're continuing trying to learn and adapt and see how we change going forward.
You mentioned COVID there. How does the real estate landscape in Belfast look in a post-COVID world?
The fog is down at the moment, I think, for a lot of people, and it has paused. Some new developments have slowed, and people are just pausing in terms of their aspirations going forward. But I think if we look at it, let's look forward, 6 months and with COVID and hopefully our wing merger, we certainly adapt and we learn to live with it a lot better. We're back to the core fundamentals, and that is, what has happened over the last number of years in terms of office growth. It's been underpinned by the success of the knowledge-based sectors. That's continuing. That's not slowing down. There's new announcements made by Invest in I since March, and new companies coming into Belfast. That will help to produce demand for other sectors. I do believe that city centre living will continue. I think it'll improve. There'll be great opportunities in Belfast for that sector. People at the moment are working at home. They have to work from home. It's a need, not a want. I think that'll change. There's discussions we're having with various occupiers, whether it's the likes of Rapid 7 or other occupiers, is that people want to go back into the office. They want to come back in the city centre. City centres have evolved over the years and ridden above many world events, whereas pandemics or wars, etc. So it's coming back, and I do believe that people want to come back and live in the city. Belfast has a huge ambition to create a creative and a vibrant city centre in terms of living. I think there's fantastic opportunity in that. The leisure industry will take a little time to recover, but I think when we get the wheels going again, that will pick up. The hotels are here, the conference centres are here, so it's not as if we have to build them. They're now built and here to open. So I look forward with very glass half full, as I always do, David. But I do really believe that the core fundamentals of the city are still intact, and it'll continue to drive growth there.
I think it's really interesting you mentioned build to rent there, and brings us back to Rafi about how the student accommodation that has been built and will be built in the future around your new campus is really preparing students to live in the city centre. And once they come out of that pretty good accommodation, much better than my student accommodation, I believe, having seen some of the brochures, that they'll then get jobs in the city and want to stay living in the city, and that build to rent really plays well into that. Damian, wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, as you rightly say, as students get used to living in the city core, and when they come out of that and they're young and they want to obviously stay within that network and live close to their work and avail of all the offerings in the city centre that that Belfast has. They'll want to have a similar type of offering, and that modern development that they used to within the student residential. Then I want that in a more flexible basis apartment development type. And I've no doubt, like it's happened in other cities, build to rent has been very successful, and it will come again to Belfast. There's absolutely no doubt about that. It's now starting.
Super. So we've heard from the panelists here some really interesting insights into some of their thoughts on Belfast. We're beginning to get some really good questions coming in from you guys, and we would urge you to put a few more questions to us and keep stretching these guys, because we've got some fantastic questions here. We have one in particular which says, how do we ensure that we not only build back better but also greener? A really hot topic at the moment about sustainability, and there's a lot more focus on that in terms of how we make not just Belfast, not just our cities, but our economies greener. Alistair, could I open that one to yourself? That sustainability angle is something that we all need to bear in mind with our future planning.
I think it's obviously very, very topical, and whilst we go through a public health crisis, I don't think any of us should forget that this time last year, the crisis on everyone's mind was the green environment and the carbon footprint. And when the public health crisis goes, as it will surely do, we will still have to look at the whole issue of carbon and how that impacts on our city, or how our city impacts on the carbon footprint. And I think from the council's perspective, whilst we've said we are pro-development and ambitious for the city, that's always has to be countered or set in the context of we're pro-development, but that development needs to be right for the green environment and for the communities in which that development sits. Now, if we break that down, though, from a kind of nice pithy slogan, where are the areas of activity? So within the Belfast Region City deal, there's a project to enhance our light rapid transit system within the city. So you'll all be familiar in Belfast with what we call the glider. And we'll all remember, as I arrived 2.5 years ago, how terrible this thing was. And suddenly, 6 months after that, how popular this thing had become. And so a light rapid transit system, which runs east to west, and there's proposals for running that north to south, and that will surely change how people travel within the city, as it has done east to west. There's also, of course, the housing offer, and that breaks into kind of two areas, really. There, again, post-pandemic, there still will be a desire for high-density urban living in cities, which is a better proposition from a carbon footprint perspective. So, we will continue to push the build-to-rent market, and indeed, I've spent my time the past few weeks talking to developers with kind of firm proposals to bring that to bear. So, we have the 5,500 or so students living in purpose-built and managed student accommodation. As Rafi said, a good number of them won't want to go back to the hinterland. They'll want to stay in the city. So that offer and that ability to give a more carbon efficient option of living in the city will retain. There's also, out with the kind of immediate development world, we have a huge housing stock in the city, and we're currently speaking to government about a retrofit energy programme for that housing, the existing housing stock, and that's a multi-million-pound project which will feed into a huge employment, skills and jobs programme. So, there's a holistic look at this. And then finally, I think the huge challenge that all of us in the real estate world are going to face is the carbon efficient construction of buildings. And that's a programme that we are currently engaged with many experts on, looking at how do you get to that point. But that's I'm not going to give you the answers to that today, but that's where the future lies. Can you create carbon zero buildings of economic scale? And that's a challenge for us all, I think, at this stage.
And Rafi, I take it from the university's point of view, with a greener way of building back better really is something that needs to happen. I know the university has a lot of courses on sustainability, and also a younger population is much more cognizant of the environment and building for the future, a sustainable future.
Absolutely. It's funny that this is the first question, because we have a new project actually that we are developing with Council, with the Resilience and Sustainability Board, It so happens that, of course, we're building a big campus that was always intended to be, reaching a very high standard in relations to emission. We recently hired a professor of architecture that comes from the most famous place in the world, in Finland, that looks at zero emission. And together with her and council, we are planning to run a program where we will be essentially educating directors across the region about the importance of this kind of agenda. And what we're planning on doing is to put our students, our new architecture students, which we are referring to as the architects of change, a little bit referring to the fact that, it's the younger generations that a year ago or 2 years ago brought to the attention of the world leaders the importance of this issue. We are worrying about COVID at the moment, but that will come back. And so the idea was, why not put our new architects, the architects of the future, the one that Belfast is training with a very strong attention to that issue, at the center of an education program, a simple one if you want, but one whereby people like you who will come into the city looking for a building will know exactly how to consider the initial questions regarding carbon emissions in the built environment. So we absolutely think it's crucial that we build better and that we pay a huge amount of attention to these issues. And we do think that, again, there is a job of collaborations in there where the architects of the future, the engineers of the future play a role in telling society what needs to be done.
And presumably and Alistair's talking about rapid transit systems and everything that goes along with that plays into the student population as well, that really relies on public transport like that and a strong network.
Yes, I mean, the university is engaged in a huge piece of work relating to transport because, of course, we don't want the story of 17,000 staff and students moving into the city becoming a sad story of congestion, of traffic problems, of parking problems, and so on. So we are again working in partnership with councils, with Translink, with Sustrans to develop this issue in a way so that we are prepared for that, and obviously. We are, starting from inside, really working very hard to make it clear that a central university is one that is reached not with a car, but with all the other modes of transportations that are available. I mean, I always say in university, I have worked and lived in many other university cities in the world before coming to Belfast. This is the only one where I used to, take my car in the morning, go to Jordanstown. And of course, that made perfect sense. We had it's outside the city. We had a big car park. Why not? It was an easy way to get to it. But that's not the normality for cities that have university in their central location. So I think there's nothing unusual in what we have to do, and we are certainly doing our best to make sure that we get there in an efficient way.
Super, thank you. Okay, we have another question here, and this one is on the B word, which we couldn't talk about this morning, or could not talk about this morning. How do we ensure that Brexit does not impact our renewed ambition? And we've talked about renewed ambition. It's our series of events where we're really shining a spotlight on Belfast in the next few months. How do we ensure that Brexit does not impact our questions? How do we ensure Brexit does not impact our renewed ambition and that we continue to attract those growth stories such as Rapid 7? Damian, I like to throw the COVID, the Brexit questions at you because I know you enjoy them. What's your take on where we go from here around the Brexit story?
I think Brexit's not new. Brexit's been about for 4 years. And if we look back, Belfast, if we look at the growth of Belfast over the last 4 years, even with Brexit and with no local devolved government in sitting, we've continued to push on. We've continued to grow as a city, and the conveyor belt of talent or companies coming in seeking talent is not stopping. So I'm not saying Brexit is irrelevant, far from it. But I'm any of the companies like Rapid 7 that we've been working with and others, Brexit really hasn't been high up the conversation agenda. It is really more about the talent and trying to create the right building for them to go into and grow and to really understand their growth projections. So it's not having a direct effect. I do think the core fundamentals of Belfast is still there in terms of pushing the growth forward. It's very hard to predict until we see what happens with the workout agreement and where we land. And you can have various theories in terms of the opportunity, but I do believe you've always got to look to see what's fueled your growth to now, and is that growth going to continue going forward? And I think that's the key thing for us to focus on, and I think that'll continue going forward.
And of course, there's a good chance we will be in a very unique position that will put us at an advantage.
Until that happens, it's very hard to. You can speculate, David, and various outcomes, and we could spend an hour talking about it. But really, until we can get a more concrete path to where that's going, then we can spot the uniqueness of the opportunity. But I think I'm a group of people. Let's look at what's in our own control and where what's bringing people here, and let's continue.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well, thank you for taking on that particular subject. Okay, we have another interesting question here. What can be done to enhance the venture capital ecosystem in Northern Ireland? The fact that most VC funding still needs to be done in London, and also what is the state of deep tech long-term investing? I wonder, Chris, would you have an opinion on this? I mean, you are working in that space. I suppose perhaps not. A lot of the cybersecurity companies that are starting up are really being propagated from larger firms like yourself.
I wish I had a perspective on it. It's so far outside of my remit that honestly I wouldn't have a perspective on it. I mean, Rapid 7 we are now a publicly listed company. But the reality is that we were a VC funded proposition, candidly, whenever they were setting up here in Northern Ireland. So I know that there are a lot of VC funded operations that come to Northern Ireland. But the intricacies of the question, I just wouldn't be able to.
No.
I wish I could.
Okay. We have another question here. I have a choice of investing in either Belfast, Manchester, or Dublin. Why would I choose Belfast over the other two? Alistair, do you want to try that one?
Well, I think just to reiterate some of the things I said. Obviously, with that kind of proposition, I want to know what they were doing and could we offer the right proposition, because I don't think Belfast needs to sell itself for anything. So there are certain sectors that we think fit with our proposition and certain groups of people that we want to go and talk to. So we are proactive in this market. But having said that, then once you're into this is someone that we would want to bring into the city, then you're back to our original proposition. We have the compelling talent offer from our universities. We have the product that people can take up, whether it's Grade A office or industrial space within the city and the city's hinterland. So we certainly have that product, and there's the track record that which has created an ecosystem for companies to bed into. And I think we've heard, it's whilst we all kind of present as partnership, it's always great for me to hear from Chris that what we are doing works for him.
Yeah.
And so to hear almost, if I'm the salesman, Chris is the product, and to hear his story and Damian's story of going out and attracting people in, and to hear the work that our academic institutions do from Raffi, that's the pitch altogether that I think is hugely powerful. So and certainly what I would also say to you, if you are thinking of Manchester or elsewhere, come and see us, because people that come to Belfast come back again.
Yeah.
And I'm in a sense living proof of that. I came here to watch a cycle race once, and I'm now living here and have invested myself into Belfast.
Very good. Yeah,
David, just adding that point, that there's one factual stat that we could probably throw into that, and that I think the FDI Global Outlook report on tier 2 cities. Belfast ranks second in terms of business friendliness. So I mean that speaks volumes. We're ranked, we're number one UK city, and that stats like that speak volumes.
It's interesting you're talking about the ecosystem, Chris. That cybersecurity ecosystem that's here. I mean, Belfast is now mentioned as a European hub for cybersecurity. That must be music to your ears, and certainly something that probably you guys have helped create.
Yeah, it's great. I mean, it wasn't so much of a factor when Rapid 7 were setting up. It was certainly a thing. CSIT had been established and Q1 Labs were here, a part of IBM, but it wasn't the developed ecosystem that it is today. And it's fantastic. Look, it's proving to be a breeding ground for a particular type of technical skill set that we're all benefiting from. Candidly, when we set up, we were just looking for the smartest engineers we could find who were looking to take on big, interesting, meaty challenges. And that served us very well. But the ecosystem in Northern Ireland for cybersecurity specifically is fantastic in 2020.
And Rafi, presumably when you see these ecosystems and being or merging, it really helps you design the courses that you're going to put on for the next few years.
Yes, absolutely, and we are constantly on the watch for that. In the sense that, as I said, Ulster University is a university that really considers change and evolution as a good thing. I studied in a university. I did my PhD at Oxford, I went on for my first job at Cambridge, and we were trying to introduce a change in the degree in linguistics. And it was a really funny experience because some universities really rest on the notion that tradition and continuation is what's absolutely needed for quality. And I'm not saying that's wrong. I'm saying that's exact opposite, if you want, in terms of a spectrum of perspective of, I think, the university in which I work now, that really sees discussion, dialogue, change in the programs, in the delivery of programs, in the way we teach, and as absolutely integral to the future. And we embrace it, and I really think, in general, Belfast is an incredibly creative city where you see new ideas just coming out everywhere. And there's I think an element that maybe we don't mention often as much, but that is the school system is a feeder in turn to the excellent university system, because we all know that by and large, we have students coming from the rest of the UK or indeed the world, but there's a huge number of people that come to these universities locally because they love living here. They've gone through amazing educations during their school years. They stay in Northern Ireland. And the fact is that Northern Ireland has amazing schools. So a lot of people, for example, that have gone away because they went to study somewhere else, come back when they have children that they want to send to school. So I think that tells a story of really a true ecosystem that, takes into consideration also the younger generations that will be, the computer wizards of the future.
A really interesting point to end on, and thank you. And thank you to all the panelists here this morning for some really interesting contributions. We've given you all a bit of a background on Belfast and a bit of a reason why it's a great place to invest. I think I'll just revert back to a comment that Alistair made earlier on and say, the best thing is really just to pick up the phone and talk to us and come and see us, because really there are huge opportunities out there in this city, which is really proven to be a vibrant and has got a very, very positive future.